In Paris, Sam attends a party thrown by his ex-girlfriend, but he isn't there to have fun. He just wants to take back his old tapes. His ex asks him to wait for a moment because she's busy with guests, so now Sam has to sit for a while and feel out of place. When he gets tired of waiting, he asks his ex to tell him where his things are because he'll take them himself. She guides him to an office and tells him to stay in there so they can talk later. Ignoring the drunk people in the corridor, Sam goes to the office and locks the door to look around in peace. When he finally finds his things, suddenly his nose starts to bleed, so he grabs some tissues and sits down to rest. He eventually falls asleep, so while there is a lot of shouting and turmoil outside, he doesn't hear anything. The next morning, Sam wakes up and gathers his belongings to go, but when he opens the door, he is startled to discover the entire place is a shambles, with blood everywhere. Sam looks outside the flat after collecting a random object to defend himself, only to discover that all of the partygoers, including his ex, have turned into zombies. Sam immediately closes the door as they try to attack him. Then he glances out the window and sees the same thing happening everywhere. Most people have turned into zombies, and those who haven't are being pursued and killed. The streets of Paris are a mess as well, and when a family tries to escape in their car, the horn noise attracts the zombies, who immediately surround and kill them. Next, Sam checks the jackets and bags the guests left behind and finds their cell phones. So he ends up listening to all their calls for help, or even the last words they sent to their loved ones. When he doesn't hear any more noises in the corridor, he leaves the apartment and goes to the roof, but he doesn't see a single living person or any kind of help coming. Afterward, Sam decides to do whatever it takes to survive and starts by cleaning the rooms to get rid of all the infected blood. Suddenly, he hears a strange noise from the apartment below, right before a shot creates a hole on the floor. Sam looks through it and discovers that the neighbor downstairs self-deleted. Curious, he takes a metal bar from the wall and begins hitting the hole until it's big enough for him to go through. After covering the old man with a blanket, he checks on the other body and realizes the first sound he had heard had been the guy shooting his wife because she was infected, and then he couldn't live with it. Sam then raids the kitchen for food, steals the man's rifle, and takes all the ammo he can find. After checking the corridor for zombies, he exits and heads downstairs, closing every door he passes along the way. When he gets to the front door, he sees the zombies outside and runs to close the door before they can grab for him. Now that the building is safe, Sam proceeds to the caretaker's room and takes the keys to all the flats, disregarding the zombie reaching through the window. He also finds a can of tuna that he quickly eats. Then he takes all the supplies and useful objects he finds there before organizing the keys by apartment number so he can use them to check each room. The first apartment he enters has a zombified family in it, and Sam is attacked, but after some struggle, he manages to push the zombie off. Then he runs outside and closes the door to draw an X on it to avoid re-entering it in the future. Sam continues to check all the other apartments, which thankfully are empty. He gathers all the food he can find, but sometimes he also takes other things like a paintball gun. Since Sam is a musician, he's happy to find an MP3 player, some old cassettes, and even a set of drums. Once he's done with all the apartments and has a mask to protect his face, Sam is closing up only to be startled by the elevator suddenly moving, which reveals a zombie inside. Since it isn't behaving violently, Sam doesn't kill him. Instead, he ties the iron fence with a belt to keep him from escaping. Later in the evening, Sam has food while listening to his old tapes, which brings lots of good memories. The next day, Sam watches the zombies outside for a while before organizing all the food he's gathered, rationing it properly, and keeping a record in a notebook. He also uses the dirt on a window to draw a grid and start counting the days. Afterward, he goes back to looking around the apartment and eventually ends up playing the drums to release some tension. However, he must be careful because all the noise attracts the zombies to the window. Days start to pass, and Sam tries his best to keep himself busy. He marks the days on the window, cooks his own meals, and sometimes at night, he goes to the roof to watch the empty city. Using the paintball gun, he starts a game of shooting the zombies on the street and crossing them out on his ex's pictures. He also records sounds he makes with random objects and creates music with them. Sam notices a strong stink one day and looks into the flat below to see the dead are decaying. He picks them up and brings them to the balcony, but he can't bear the thought of throwing them out like rubbish. Instead, he stuffs them into sleeping bags and leaves them on their bed with some of their valuables. Sam exits the room after a period of silence and tapes the door shut so the stink doesn't escape. Sam then takes a shower, only to have the water simply stop running. Later, while he's in bed, he hears a weird sound and discovers a horde of zombies storming into his room to eat him. Sam yells in pain, only to wake up and realize it was just a nightmare. The next day, Sam adds exercise to his routine. He starts running around the building while listening to music. When he stops by the elevator, he dares to shake the man's hand and decides to call him Alfred. Sometime later, it finally rains. So Sam uses lots of pots and containers to gather water and wash his body. Then he sits next to the elevator to smoke a cigar while having a one-sided conversation with Alfred, confessing that the hardest part is not knowing what happened to his family. Sometime later, Sam is at the window with the paintball gun again and is shocked to notice a cat on the streets. He immediately rushes downstairs and opens the door, making sure there aren't zombies around before opening a tuna can and offering it to the cat, who is hiding under a car. The cat is hesitant, but can smell food, so it slowly begins making its way toward Sam. However, a sudden noise scares the cat away. Sam drops his weapon to leave the door open and begins sneaking around, looking for the cat. He hides behind automobiles, but a zombie notices him and pursues him. Sam rushes into the car and kicks the zombie through the window, only to find a second zombie approaching. Sam quickly jumps into the back seat and exits through the passenger door, then goes back into the building and slams the door before the zombies can catch up with him. When Sam returns to his flat, he looks out the window and discovers the cat chilling close to the zombies, so he shoots it. Then he turns around and sees blood on the floor, which makes him realize his leg was wounded by the zombie in the car. After cleaning the wound, he sits in front of a mirror with the weapon in hand. There are no signs of transformation, but he can't be sure he isn't infected, so he puts the weapon in the right position to self-delete if it comes down to it. Sam just sits there for a while and eventually falls asleep, causing the weapon to slip and shoot a bullet. Thankfully, it doesn't hit Sam, who wakes up to notice he hasn't changed at all and laughs happily. Sometime later, while Sam is taking care of the plants, he hears a weird noise and yells a few words, but nobody answers. He looks through the window and notices a person in the building across the street, but he can't tell if it's a zombie or not. He goes to the roof for a better look, but there are no signs of life. It's starting to get cold now, so when he returns to the apartment, Sam makes a pillow fort and starts a fire to heat some water for a warm bath. While he's trying to relax, he hears noises again, but they quickly disappear. Later, Sam begins to worry about the amount of food he has left, so he grabs a bag and goes outside to look for supplies. However, this turns out to be just his imagination because, in the end, he doesn't dare to leave. Feeling incredibly lonely, Sam starts to drink, and one afternoon he yells at Alfred, mentioning how he hasn't seen any zombies for days and how they're both alone now. He accidentally spills some drink on Alfred, who starts shaking the door and causes Sam's rant to escalate into yelling. Furious about his current situation, he throws the bottle against the wall and runs back to the apartment. He's so desperate not to be alone that Sam begins playing the drums again, and the noise brings back the zombies, who gather outside the window trying to reach for a yelling Sam. Afterward, Sam apologizes to Alfred for all the things he said. Later, Sam is rationing the little food he has left while listening to his old tapes, and hearing his family's words upsets him so much that he pushes the food off the table. A disturbance wakes Sam awake in the evening, and this time he doesn't hesitate to shoot at that door. When he looks through the resulting hole, he discovers that he shot an ordinary woman, not a zombie. Sam lifts her up and leads her to the bed, where he instantly treats to her wounds and removes the bullet, pleading with her to stay with him. When he exits the room, he notices the woman's luggage, which has some rope and a hook. The next morning, Sam is grieving when he suddenly hears a noise and discovers the woman has survived. He feeds her some pigeon soup and learns more about her. She's called Sarah, and she's been surviving by jumping from building to building using her hook. She's seen a few survivors hiding in apartments, but most of them have become crazy. The zombies aren't good with heights, but she still never stayed more than a week in one place. Sam tells her it's safe in this building, but Sarah is still wary, explaining the shot from last night got the zombies' attention, and eventually they'll tear off the door because they have nothing better to do. Sometime later, Sam is doing his daily walk through the building, and Sarah comes with him. She gets scared when they walk in front of Alfred, but Sam promises he'd never eat either of them. Afterward, Sam begins making music again and is delighted to see Sarah helping him with it. In the evening, Sam smokes while chatting with Alfred and wonders if he'll be able to make it now that he has proper company. Eventually, there's almost no food left for both of them, so Sam has to take drastic measures. He returns to the door with the X, cuts a hole in it, and then shoots every zombie inside. Now he can safely go inside and take all the food he can find. Afterward, he returns to his apartment and notices Sarah isn't there. He looks around and finds her on the roof. Apparently, she's looking for a way to leave soon. Sam objects to her wanting to practice jumping towards the building across the street because it is too risky. Sarah, on the other hand, believes that if they stay, they will either go insane and self-destruct, or the zombies will finally burst down the door. Sarah storms back inside her flat, enraged. Sam pursues her, but when she doesn't respond, his mind begins to catch up to what actually transpired. Sarah never awoke while Sam was tending to her wounds, and her appearance was a delusion. When Sam enters the room now, he discovers her lifeless body on the bed and tearfully takes her hand. Then he wraps a sheet around her and lights candles to bid her farewell. He also checks her bag again and finds a digital camera, so he looks through the pictures. At first, all the photos are of Sarah and her family, but then he finds a picture of himself on the roof, confirming that Sarah had been the presence in the other building. Accepting the fact he's going crazy, Sam decides it's time to go. He starts by lighting all his old tapes on fire. Then, he grabs Sarah's bag and goes to the roof to escape. However, he remembers Alfred and decides to free him. Alfred doesn't attack. Instead, he follows him around, and Sam sends him into an apartment. At that moment, the burning tapes activate the fire alarm, and the zombies finally break down the front door, desperately coming after Sam. He shoots as many zombies as he can, but eventually, they make him fall, so he pushes them away and decides to run instead of fighting. Now that the lift is free, Sam rushes inside and locks the barrier, ignoring all the hands reaching for him. Then Sam begins descending the lift shaft and running for an empty flat, but he is pursued by a zombie. Sam grabs the curtains and covers the zombie with them, distracting him. When he tries to flee, he accidentally bumps into some objects on the floor, alerting the zombie to his location. Sam reacts promptly by beating the zombie many times and placing a couch on top of him to confine him. Sam then climbs onto the couch and exits through the hole to return to his smoke-filled apartment. There are lots of zombies around too, but the smoke allows Sam to slowly walk around undetected. Eventually, he makes it to the roof and uses Sarah's hook to throw the rope toward the other building. There's a zombie coming after him, so Sam jumps without much thought and hits his body against the wall. After a few seconds, Sam wakes up and is relieved to have escaped. There's a zombie at the window, so instead he climbs all the way to the roof and stares at the city skyline. Suddenly, he hears some noises far away and hopes they were made by survivors.